Well, thanks everybody for coming out to another Office 365 Productivity Tips webinar. Tomas, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's wrapping up. I'm going to have 5 days off here, which I don't think I've had 5 days off nearly all year long. So looking forward to it.
Well, excellent. Well, we'll just get things underway because I'm sure there's a lot of, I have no idea what Tom's going to present. He has no idea what I'm going to present. So we'll just get into it.
Let's do it.
Quick introductions. My name is Christian Buckley. I'm the founder and CEO of CollabTalk. I am a 8-time MVP, Office Apps and Services MVP, and Microsoft Regional Director. I'm based in Lehigh, Utah. I know. Thank you very much. And you can find me out on buckleyplanet.com. And I also, you see the little pitch there, subscribe on YouTube. This recording and all of the other ones are available. You can find them if you go to buckleyplanet.com, which is my blog. There's nothing to sign up. I don't track and build lists or anything, but at the top nav of that, you'll see productivity tips, and that has links to every one of these that Tom and I have done. And I'd love to have you subscribe to us and follow us out on YouTube, but there's those details. And Tom, over to you.
Okay, my name, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Hi there. Hi, Tom. I work for Cambia Health Solutions, which is an insurance company up in the Pacific Northwest area. Used to live in the Pacific Northwest area, Portland, Oregon, but I met somebody and ended up moving out here to Minneapolis. So I live in Minneapolis, but I still work for Cambia Health. Find me on Twitter at Duffbert. And I do 1minuteofficemagic.com, which is a site where I share these tips and other tips, all having to do with productivity, Microsoft Office things, stuff like that. And I've been doing that. Gosh, I think if I go back and look at when we first started doing this, Sandra and I, it was like back in 2015.
Yeah.
So got lots of tips out there now.
Yep, and it's a great resource, and this is where kind of the history of this, where I was looking to create something similar, and found that Tom was already doing this, and said, "Hey, why don't we join forces and just kind of share some of these things out?" And we do like to keep track. I'll get into the format here in a second, but I want to start with the current leaderboard.
Yeah, let's start with the current leaderboard.
Tom is dominating right now.
In
so
some
last
areas.
couple events. Yeah. What's interesting is how we keep score of this. Every single one of these, the points don't matter, but they really do.
They really do.
but how close it has just been back and forth over almost 3 years of doing this together. And you can see that where Tom has most rounds and most events won, and yet I have more points. Just amazing. Barely. I know. Barely. Or it just shows that it's back and forth. let's kind of do the outline what we do here. So this is it's the head-to-head format. We're going to take turns over 5 rounds. We're going to share 10 tips. We don't know what the other person is going to present. So I might present on PowerPoint, and Tom might present on OneNote, and so and then people will vote on that. So there are no duplicates. Well, not intentionally, but we do make sure if my number 1 happens to be Tom's number 2, he needs to have a backup. He can't present the same thing, and has to have 5 original things. So we switch off the lead. Like I'll start out with round 1, then he'll take the lead on round 2.
We've each had one penalty in that area.
Correct. Historically, but we've gone back and we've added in something. We want to make sure that our slides, that these recordings, that we share out 10 original tips each month.
Because you paid good money for this, and we deliver value.
Right. We will at minimum double your money, your investment. And then the audience votes at the end of each round. Would push out a quick poll, and so we do track that. And then we say no hitting below the belt, and then Tom, what you always say,
always chimes in with, "I'm short. That's my only option."
Every hit is below the belt.
Every hit below the belt.
And then we do kind of crown the winner of the month, so the grand poobah of the month. So with that, let's get started. All right, Tom, are you
Ding,
ready?
ding,
Are you
ding.
buckled? Let's do it.
I am buckled. Let's do this.
Okay, here's one of my favorite new features: pin channels and teams. So this is something that's been talked about for a while, been waiting for it. And the way that I like to present and talk about it is actually when Teams launched 3 years ago, one of the things that I heard the most from the community was, well, we see this proliferation of teams and channels, and I want to be able to clean that up. I want to be able to organize that navigation. And so a couple things Microsoft did, well, they said, well, you can go in there and favorite to highlight what's visible, the teams that are visible or not. It's like, yeah, but even if I'm a member of 10 different teams, I might only be actively participating in 1 or 2 channels at most out of each of those teams. I want a quick way to navigate between those. I'm constantly having to, expand a team, find the right channel. And then Microsoft did another thing where they added the artificial intelligence to go in there and determine, hey, of the 10 teams that you're a member of, you're really only active in 3 of those. Therefore, we're going to unfavorite or hide the other 7. You're still, it's still accessible. You're still a member. You can go in and add them back into your view. But the AI goes and hides and tries to clean up some of that. Even in that case, there are certain things I want to pin. Don't move it, because while I might not be in there every day, this channel, I'm monitoring the conversation. I want to be able to jump right back into that. And so you have this ability to go in there and pin. So it's very simple. I guess I should have been scrolling through that. To pin is that you'd go and you select within the team, you go to the channel, and you can either right-click on the channel title or go to the ellipses there, and you'll see right there from the menu the pin. That's it. When you click on pin, it then puts it to the top left navigation as pinned, and so you can put your most active channels right there. As you can see that it has the team name and the channel name right there in an organized short list, that quick list of favorites. And so removing that is the exact same way, it's just in reverse. Right click or click on the ellipses of the channel and unpin it from that view. That's it.
All I can say is I'm glad I have a backup, because this one made it in my deck too.
Oh, this is only the third time that's happened.
Third time that we've actually had that happen, yeah.
That's
this
exciting.
Is something that we saw rolled out probably, 2-3 weeks ago, I think,
right.
into the Teams client. And I went ahead and did an internal tip and then put it on 1 Minute Office Magic too. It's like, hey, you can pin these things. And so I did an example of pinning 2 of my general channels for 2 of the however many team workspaces that I'm in. And I left it there. And now it's like, those are the only 2 channels I hit on a regular basis anymore, because they're just front and center. I can see when there's new stuff there. It's a quick click to get to them. And it really saves a lot of time from having to kind of do a visual scan to see, hey, do I have anything in this team workspace? Do I have anything in this one? Do I have anything in this one? Just those are the main 2 channels that I need to have monitored. And it's a really great feature. I recommend everybody take a shot at using it if you see it in your Teams client, which I think it's fully rolled out.
I think it's fully rolled out now. If you don't yet see that ability, it's just it's being rolled out if it's not already there. Yeah, this is something we heard about back in May at the or actually going back to March with the MVP summit. Anyway, we caught wind of it. We heard about it for months. It had actually been sitting in my kind of v.next deck for these webinars, and I've just been waiting for it to show up in my tenant to be able to talk about it. So this was the first time. So
yeah, and there was no way I could have got that in before you, since you went first and you stuck it in there first. I'm like, I would have normally led with something like this, but I was like, yeah,
I had a feeling. Well, Tom, over to you.
There we go. So my leadoff one is the weather in World Clock Webparts on SharePoint Online pages. So if you're using modern pages in your SharePoint Online environment, there are some web parts out there that are really kind of new and unusual and can be really useful depending on what kind of information you're trying to display for this particular site. And two of the ones that I kind of put together because they look and feel very similar to each other, and that is the weather web part and the world clock web part. So if you're in a modern page, go out there, you click on the add a web part feature, you'll see those two down there into the W section, so it's pretty much at the bottom of the list. And what you do if you click on the weather web part, I'm going to have problems with that one. Weather web part, what it does is it comes up and gives you, okay, type in the weather location. So in my particular case, I live in Minneapolis, and I thought, hey, that'd be cool on my page to be able to see what the weather is outside, even though I could probably see it in Outlook and all the other places, but I want to see it on the web page. So I type in Minneapolis, gives me a list of all the Minneapolises that it has in its conglomeration of different sites that it can get you weather for. So I went ahead and checked the Minnesota one. And then at that point, I'm now getting my weather. I can change that by, editing the web part if I want. But I can now see for Minneapolis, when I did this back on the 3rd of November, it was going to be cloudy, 43, 33. If I did it today, it would be, it's about 30, and you're going to get a ton of snow by this time tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. So you can add different ones in there. So you could, in a, let's say that you have like a home page for your intranet, and your locations hit like 5 or 6 or 7 different places throughout the country. You could have a weather in our locations section and have all these listed there. And that can really help you kind of get an idea of what's going on at the different locations that you've got. Also, the world clock works much the same way. So I selected world clock for this one, again, typed in information, and I went ahead and put Cairo in there. Now, it told me Cairo, which I just assumed meant Cairo, Egypt, which it did. But there's other Cairos in the country, which I was completely unaware of. But since I'm going to be going on vacation to Egypt at the end of January, thought it might be nice to know what's the time there so I can get my mind around how many hour time difference there's going to be. And when I hit OK, it's basically telling me that it's 7:35, so I think it's like an 8-hour time shift between where I'm at and where it's at there. But again, that can also be useful. Like for our company, we have locations in Washington, Oregon, Utah, and Idaho. So it would be very easy to say, hey, I want to have one for Mountain Time and I want to have one for Pacific Time. Granted, they're only an hour apart. I think you can make that calculation in your head. But let's say you've got a project where you've got people over in India. You might want to put a world time clock on there with India's time so you can easily see, hey, it's 8 o'clock in the morning here, but in India it's 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night or something like that. So these are two web parts that are really nice. You may not need them for everything that you're doing, but for those instances where you want to have a wider perspective of what's going on in different locations that may affect you, these are two really good options you can use.
Awesome. And I'm going to push out the poll here. I think this is important, especially for a multi-geo organization to have access to this kind of data. But all right.
Yeah, especially if you've got one of those weird locations where they're like 12 and a half hours ahead of you. Instead of you trying to figure that out mentally. When I wrote, I had 2 books on back in the Lotus Notes days, same time. And the person I was writing the first one with was on the East Coast. I was on the West Coast. So in my mind, I was always calculating a 3-hour time difference. And then when we did the second one, which was more admin related, we had a third person who was in England. So I was automatically calculating times 3 hours ahead and 8 hours ahead, where if I'd had this, it would have been just look at it and forget it. So,
yeah, for years, my teams were in Ahmedabad, India, Sydney, New York, and London.
Wow.
And then, my team there, I was in Seattle, well, I guess New York and also Boston. So yeah, it was, we didn't have a lot of all hands meetings. It didn't work.
I can bet.
Well, we're going to close out the poll. A couple more seconds for those who want to vote. All right, and that is 65 to 35. I took that one, Tom.
You should have. I have no problems with that one whatsoever.
All right, round two. Over to you.
Look at that, pinning my favorite channels in Microsoft Teams. That one doesn't get shown here, does it? So I had put a little buffer before I was going to do another SharePoint Online web part feature, but apparently I'm going to do them back to back now. Two additional web parts that have been added also to SharePoint Online for modern pages is the button web part and the call to action web part. Again, based on what you're doing, this can be a very easy way to get that interactivity on your page without you having to go through and do a whole lot of design and overview and HTML and stuff like that. It's very straightforward. So again, you select and say, I want to add a web part. You can either do button or call to action. First, we're going to do the button one. When you click the button, you'll see here that it adds this button that's very gray. And if you click on the pencil icon, which is for edit, it gives you this side panel on your page, which allows you to type in whatever you want the label to be on the button and what it's going to link to. In addition, you can also say, do I want that button to be left justified, right justified, center justified in the web part? And it's also going to basically tell you about the color, but it's always going to set the color based on what the theme accents for your site or for your page are, or your site. In this particular case, I had put something out there that called time to search, added Bing as my destination, and so it put this button out here. It's dark blue because that was the theme color of my site for accents. But again, I could go out and I could try to get an image and then I could paste it on the page and then try to put a link to it, or I could just do this really quickly. And so it's up to you. If you have people who are really into the design aspect, you may still want to use a picture, an image, make the image linkable, something like that for a button per se. But this is a really good way just to get a quick and easy button out there without having to do a lot of work to get it. Likewise, you have the call to action. The call to action incorporates the button, but it also pulls in kind of a statement to get people to do something, and it also allows you to have a background image attached to it. So here, you'll see that when I click the call to action one, it would come up with my box here for what my call to action would be, my button, which we just discussed, and then I've got this background image. So what I did is I went ahead and clicked the pencil icon to get this side piece here, so I could put in a button label where I wanted the link to go, and then I could click on the image for background, and I could also go directly to the image here. You'll see that little looks like a mountain with the moon type thing image there. I could click on that button and also get the image piece that I wanted. But when it brings in the image, it then allows you to move the image up or down and change the focal point. So in this particular case, I wanted something out here that showed, again, I'll go with the Egypt theme since I've got this cruise coming up. But what I did is I went ahead and grabbed an image, moved it down to where I got some of the camels, some of the pyramid in the background, so I thought that looked really nice. I have this embrace adventure with a cruise down the Nile. That was my call to action. And then at the button was book my cruise, and here's the link to the company where you could book your cruise. So you can either go just the button if you don't want to have any of the background imaging there, or if you don't have a call to action involved, or you can do the full call to action with the image, with the information that you want them to have. You could do something similar by having an image out there, putting a text display on the image, and then adding a button underneath it. This just kind of makes it happen all in one little package without you having to put it all in different places. So again, depending on what you're doing, this may be just what you want to get people to actually do something when they come to your site and recognize that there's a direction that you would like them to go.
I have to say, so I have this conversation with clients all the time. In fact, I just had this conversation yesterday where I was chastising a client for the lack of call to actions in their content. I mean, obviously, if you're looking at external visitors to your website and you're providing content, and then you're not asking them to do anything like next steps, to buy something, to read more, to contact you, you want that. But internal content, it's much the same. There's a lot of content where you're looking for them, or maybe they there's not something specific, but you can provide links to other relevant sites and content. It just makes it much more powerful, much more useful and helpful, at the end of that content. So if you have kind of an intended next step for that content, point people to it, make it easier.
Yeah, and what's really nice too is this is all almost point and click, in the fact that you say, hey, I want this here, I'll go find my image, I'll put the information here on the side, and boom, you have something that looks really nice, instead of you having to come up and try to piece it all together, which can have less than desirable effects depending on how good you are as a designer. And I'm including myself in on that one. So this helps me look a lot better than I actually am when it comes to designing web pages.
Well, excellent. Well, let me jump over to mine. So I wanted to talk about something that is not quite as exciting for the end users, but admins absolutely love this capability. So this is something that's, again, been talked about for a while. But you're seeing a capability. There's a lot of capabilities that are cross workload. And so here's a great example of that, creating the sensitivity labels. So it's the, did I jump? For some reason, my build, I jumped right to the top of that. Well, anyway, so you have the ability, it's in public preview now, but you can go and create these sensitivity labels around certain content types, and apply those to a specific, Microsoft team, to specific groups, so groups of users within SharePoint and OneDrive. So as people are adding content, that it is, if they're from a group of people that's external, you could say, well, hey, these external users, everything that they upload, you can watermark it or add a header or footer to that content, so that people realize it's coming from the outside, or it's a specific type of content. So I went in and kind of to walk you through the process, just some of the screens there. You do need to be an administrator to be able to go in and create these labels, but inside the Security and Compliance Center, under Classifications, Sensitivity Labels, go and create that new label. So I've got a couple that are set up. I went and kind of walked through, set up one called Super Sensitive, and then applied it just to Tom, so that I'm just flagging anything that Tom adds. Just don't trust you, Tom. Sorry.
I wouldn't trust me either, so it's okay.
But go and create that new, and of course the process for creating that, naming it. You have the ability to go in there and set some encryption and specific permissions policies, whether you want these automatically encrypted or the permissions set, or you want the users, as they're uploading content, to be able to manually apply different rules. So you can do that. Apply, as I mentioned, the watermarks, or add a customized header or footer. Like I just have across Tom, just diagonally, giant bold red word that says security risk on anything that Tom has. This is an example, okay, Tom. I'm just saying.
I'm getting the idea here, Christian.
But you have the ability to determine specific data loss prevention rules. Again, go and set that up if you want to flag that specifically. You can set up the auto labeling, as I mentioned, so specific file types or keywords or groups of people. So you can kind of set up the rules around that sensitivity label. And then after reviewing all of that, you submit that. It's then added. You get a confirmation. It's then added to your list. You can then go and publish that out, and you can publish it to specific team, to the entire tenant, to a group of users, or as I did, to one specific user. So you have those different options. It does require, because it is public preview, it does require PowerShell to activate that preview. But once you've got that created and published, and then you can go and apply that at the right level and start using those today. So it's generally available. It should be on everyone's tenant today to go and start exploring that. But again, I think what's stand out about this is it's not just a label that's within just SharePoint or just Teams. It is across those workloads, which allows you to go and start setting up those labels and some of these policies across the entire organization.
Yeah, this is something that we definitely want to play with in our organization. We have kind of not paid any attention to it yet because we've been in the middle of a migration. But once we get done with the migration at the end of December, I think this is going to rise pretty high up on our list of what capabilities does this give us and what can we do to make this happen within our environment and have the governance that we need to make it happen. So I'm really excited to dig into this one deeper.
And that's like the next step is once you have that, you've gone through the pilots, you're starting to deploy that out there, and you start assembling your governance activities, and you go start looking at, okay, now that we've seen this and we have a little bit of experience under our wings of what this looks like and how we may need to adjust our initial plans when we were kind of greenfield looking at this. Here's what we need to do. Here's the behaviors we're seeing and how people are using the system. And hey, we need to create these labels, these classifications, and get a little more organized going forward. And that's, I think that's typical. All right, I'm going to launch the poll.
Sounds good.
Poll number 2 is now live. And we're at 68-32. Tom, you took it.
Woo!
They listened. Tom spoke. They listened. All right, let's
that
jump
doesn't
around.
happen very often.
Yeah. Well, it's the one time. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So here's talk about teams. Here's something I don't know if you guys are also talking about in governance. Controlling who can email a channel in Teams. Are you guys thinking about inside your organization, Tom? Are you thinking about disallowing people from emailing a channel?
We have not gone down that path yet. If people are doing it, we're not restricting it.
Okay.
But again,
by default, it's there. So
yeah,
if an admin, you need to go in and turn that off.
Right. But we've been more concerned, like I say, just with the sheer migration of 3,300 SharePoint sites. This isn't something that's quite cropped up on our particular radar screen at this stage.
Well, part of what I'm highlighting here is that, I mean, while you can do things at that higher levels, an admin go and do that, but you as the team owner, you can go in there and you have some more granular control over this capability. And so sometimes, I mean, it's just useful to have that and, have that within Outlook and be able to, push content in and send messages over to the team without logging into the team's, app. I mean, I'm using more and more of the mobile app, but even for longer conversations, threads, things that are happening within Outlook, I find myself pushing information into a channel through that. Outlook is just a lot easier than going and retyping something in. So it can be part of that. So anyway, so you have the ability, if you want to. First, how do I contact that channel? So go into the selected channel where that conversation is happening, and you can either right-click or click on the ellipses and select Get Email Address. And that's what you'll see right there. There's my little red box there. And that will show you, that's the advanced settings. Got ahead of myself. So that's the first one, the Get Email Address. Now from that, if you want to go in there and modify that, that's the advanced settings. There was the advanced graphics that I was showcasing earlier. And so within that, go in the advanced settings, and that's where you get that expanded view. And you can say, right, by default, anyone can send emails or only members of the team, which is kind of my default setting. I don't want somebody that's outside of that. It might be a public team, but I want people that are active within it that are, designated members of the team to be only those that can email things into it. and so that just controls if you have a larger organization that somebody's just not kind of abusing that ability. Or you can determine, hey, only from those domains. And so you could say, hey, it's only those from our organization or from our company email, for example. And so you can be if you have external users but want to limit it only to authorized external users, then you can say, hey, only these 2 partner domains, for example, will we allow into that list. And so it's a nice set of features. Again, the admin has the ability to determine at the tenant level or the team level, the team creator, whether they want that ability at all to be allowed. And that's it.
This is actually kind of cool. I obviously had, as I mentioned, never really paid much attention to it, but I could see how this could be really good. Like if you have, let's say certain Microsoft flows that need to run on a regular basis.
Yep.
And you want to know that flow ran properly. Well, you could just set it up to where the final thing it does in the flow step is email hey, I did this, and email it directly into the channel. And it may be a monitoring channel in your team workspace.
Or it could be that you have another third-party system that automatically generates an email out a report. And you can send that report and then start cataloging that content. Yeah, there's a lot that you can go in and do through that email, and email is long been a poor man's API, and do it.
I'm good with that one. So yeah, I like that one. So let me
stop sharing.
Okay, dark mode in the Outlook mobile app. I'm going to get dusted vote-wise on this one. I just know it. Because your last one was cool there, Christian. So dark mode seems to be the big thing now, where people like to have a black background on their application with the text being white.
All the kids are doing it.
Yeah, all the kids are doing it. It's a cool thing.
That's right.
So one of the recent changes that came out probably like in the last month or so is that the Outlook application on your mobile device, in this case I'm doing iPhone, now enables dark mode. So if you're really into that particular way of viewing your stuff, it's very easy to go in. So in this case, here's my screen print. I'm in Outlook for iPhone, and I just click on the word inbox. And then once I do that, it takes me to this particular screen with all my folders. In the lower left corner, you'll see a little gear icon, which is where I get into settings. Now, once I go into settings, if I scroll down towards the bottom, I'll see the option for appearance. And when I click that, it gives me the ability to have a light appearance or a light mode, which is what you were seeing in the initial picture. Take the system default if you have a default level on your iPhone of whether things should take dark or light. In this case, I always wanted my email to be in dark mode for this particular application. So I went ahead and selected dark. And once I did that and went back and looked at my inbox, now I've got the black background, white text, and depending on how your eyes react to stuff like this, you may find this a lot easier to look at, or you may just like it because it looks cool. I kind of like it at night because if I'm laying there in bed and I'm just wanting to check my email real quickly, it's not going to throw off this, beacon of light to half the room if I'm in light mode, where in dark mode it's going to be a lot less intrusive to anybody else who might be in the room at the same time and trying to sleep. So this is kind of a nice way to be a little bit more polite in your viewing preferences if it happens to be dark in the room. So I just leave it on dark mode now. Again, it's not a critical thing, but if you're really into this and it makes a difference in how your eyes perceive it and how tired your eyes get, then this is a good way to go.
I just thought of a great use for this. Personally, I'm not a fan of dark mode for email. I use it in other apps. Just me why. Just for email and my phone, I prefer the bright background. But it would be great if the AI determined that, oh, Christian is attending a movie at this theater. Dark mode.
And he obviously ignored all the warnings to turn off your cell phone.
Do I need to I can ignore them if I have dark mode, right? That's what you said, essentially, Tom.
I'm not bailing you out of jail if they take you out for whatever and try to. Yeah, no, you're on your own.
I've got the poll live there, and we'll let people vote here for a second. But yeah, it's funny. So I use dark mode in Teams, for example. So on the full screen and having that, especially, so I've got the 2 monitors and the giant monitor. They usually have Teams open all day long over on one, and I've got that in dark mode. But for my phone, it just I don't know, just don't like it. Yeah, it's for me harder to read. I don't know.
I find a lot of times it's whatever you first started using.
It's
can
like an
often become your
thing, Tom. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm,
Those old people. Yes.
Maybe.
All right, and we're ending the polling, and it's 56-44. I've taken that one, round 3.
That was closer than I expected. So let's go into round 4. What I'm going to do for my round 4 tip is adding comments to non-Microsoft files in SharePoint Online and OneDrive. So this may be something that you're not used to doing in the first place, but you've had the ability to add comments to Microsoft files, such as Word, Excel, things like that, when you're looking at them in like a list, like what you see here. And those comments in the file become part of the file too. So you can start having, little questions and answers or sidebar discussions, and it becomes part of the context of what that document is, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, you were never able to do that in non-Microsoft documents, such as PDFs or things like that. Well, now you can. So you have that ability, based on whatever kind of file you're working with, to get that side context that, again, adds, for me at least, one more reason why storing your files in OneDrive or a SharePoint Online document library has so much more to give you than like a file share somewhere where it's just a file name and that's all you got. Good luck. Or your folders that are nested 15 deep. So in order to use this comment feature, in here I've got a document library, and I just went out to there and found a PDF file, SharePoint Online Quick Start Guide. And in order to get to the area where that comment section is available and you can see what's been done, I can either hover over the ellipsis, vertical ellipsis, which causes the little pop-up box to appear, and I could click on See Details. Or if I've selected this item, I can always click the information icon that's on the far right side of the menu bar. Either one will take you to the same place, which is this sidebar panel that allows you to see various things, how many views, who's viewed it, stuff like that. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see this activity. And on the activity, it will say who created the file, who edited the file, so on and so forth. And it also gives me the ability to add a comment. So in this particular case, it said, thanks for sharing, went ahead and hit the send icon. And that now appears in the flow of activities for this document. And again, it travels with the document. So if I were to move this to a different document library or something like that, all this information is going to be traveling with it, which is really good. When I looked at the documentation, apparently it's also supposed to send the owner of the document an email saying, hey, somebody added a comment. And if you add a reply to that comment, then the person who put the comment in there would get the email also. I didn't get that effect, and I didn't see where I could change that. But maybe I just don't have the full aspect of it rolled out, and it hasn't made it down to us for that particular aspect of it. But the comments do exist. You can add them, and this is a really good way to add those side notes to a file without you having to add new columns for the file, or new columns in the library or stuff like that. This is just built into any file that you may happen to have in a document library, be it SharePoint Online or OneDrive.
So this is this type of capability has been around in other forms for a few years. So back with the on like the Office apps online back with when they were the server products.
Mm-hmm.
So you could actually, if you were co-editing a Word doc, for example, and go in there and have a conversation, and it would attach. Now it was not entirely the same thing. It wasn't tracking the status like, hey, you shared, or then comment,
right,
and then notifying on that. But I would always remark the fact that I could go in and co-edit on a document out within the Office app online and see that history, and go back a year later and see the side conversation that we had around the creation of that document. And yet I didn't have the same capability for content that's stored within our primary repository within SharePoint. And so to see that capability now of course it's all via Office 365, so it is all cloud-based, but seeing that now more prevalent, my point is it's more consistent with what Teams does. It's one of the more powerful things about Teams is that you can add content and then have conversation, and that conversation be in context to the content that's being shared and discussed and being edited. But this actually resides with the history of that file itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is pretty cool, which means that it's in the system, it's searchable, it's available in there.
Right. So good stuff.
Cool.
Let me go ahead and stop sharing, and you can pick up your round 4.
Never stop sharing, Tom.
Never stop sharing.
All right, so here's one where we've talked about some variations of this, but this one is as new to our list here. But is to translate within your emails. And so I had this example. If you can see my little example, it's all French to me. This is confusing, Tom.
Oui.
But what's nice about this is that if you are working with a multi-geo organization or a customer or something, if you have a specific word or an entire body of content that you're trying to translate within Outlook now, so there's a way to quickly get to that Microsoft translator. So it's up within. It's like, here is an example where I want to go and turn the word confusing. I want to translate that into French and insert that in. So I go up into review, click on the translate, the application, that button. You can see the drop down there where I've got some options where you can actually, if it's a larger body of content, it'll either do a pop out right in the window, or if you want to send an entire paragraph or multiple pages out to the translation service, it'll take you and open up a page, a website or a web page, and give you that translation. But here that I've gone in, and so if I just want to translate the selected text, hit the next button there. So for specific words or phrases, you do that right from the ribbon. So it opens up then that research expanded view. And so from there, again, you can switch the language. You can look at the translation. You can insert that in and swap out that word. Or as I said, if you're trying to translate an entire email and do that pop out, it's a nice way to very quickly go in and see what somebody's talking about. If I know that somebody is talking bad about me in another language, now I've got the jump on that. Not that ever happens. But what's nice about this too, it's not just Outlook, and so Microsoft is getting really good at releasing cool features that are cross-app and cross-workload, and so it's also available in Word, Excel, OneNote, and PowerPoint. And so it's great capability. And for those that have watched us for a few years, we've talked about the Microsoft Translator capability. I've had the app on my phone. In fact, I had this wonderful experience where I was on a flight leaving. Let's say I was flying from Salt Lake back to Seattle when I lived in Seattle a couple years back, and there were 2 women sitting next to me on the airplane that were tourists from China and spoke very broken English. And I sat there while I still had Wi-Fi and did use the translator and had a whole conversation with them. And it was very cool to have that, be able to sit there and talk about sites and give them some advice of what to go and see within Seattle using that translator. And so now you're seeing that capability in more and more places, which is cool to see.
Yeah. One thing that I'll mention, and correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, but I think this is the case. When it does the translation, it's actually sending it to Microsoft's translation service.
Correct.
And then sending back the results. So in our particular company, since we're healthcare and we deal with PHI, doing something like this may be a little iffy if you are not paying attention to, I'm going to send this whole email over, but it's got PHI in it. They're going to translate everything. That may not be allowed. So
you as an
think about what you're doing.
Would restrict whether you allow any kind of app and its ability to go and send information or receive information externally. So that can be shut down at the network level to where this feature doesn't even work inside of your organization. Yeah, you're exactly right.
So very cool. Yeah, I'm kind of toying with what options do I have, because last night I'm laying in bed thinking, when we're going through the Cairo airport, the odds of us being able to stop at a little restaurant and get food could be challenging.
Yeah, if you have a data plan or have access to Wi-Fi, I mean, the translator service is fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm thinking I've got to figure out what my options are there, that I may not be able to use it at all times, but it may bail me out for those situations of give me food or else, and I can make that sound very polite in whatever language I need it to be in to not cause an international incident. So that's good.
Exactly. 67-33, Tom wins.
Ooh, we come down to the fifth round, tied again.
All right, so let's close this out. We're going to do one more. This is one that I had something else on my list, and then I needed to use this, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't think we've done that one. And I went and checked the database, and we had not. And so I added it, which means I have another one ready to go for next time, Tom. Cleaning up conversations in Outlook. I know nobody ever needs to use this, but
I use this hourly.
So this is one where I have like my little database of tips of things. There's people that we follow. We've shared stuff that why did I put Joanna? I'll fix that. Joanne Klein. I know that it's Joanne. Just a type. But so she writes some great posts. She's one of the blogs that I regularly read and follow. And she'll share these productivity tips, and she'll go in kind of in depth on a certain product. So she shared 4 or 5 around Outlook, and I preferred her text and her example to what I found on Microsoft site. But this is again where you're part of a number of conversations, back and forth threads where you're getting a lot of duplicate information, and it's really bulking up your email, your folders. I participate in dozens of different distribution groups, distribution lists or DLs, where multiple people responding back to the same question, and so just trying to kind of keep track of that. So I will go in on a regular basis and do the same thing as what Tom just said. I will go in and clean up a specific conversation, a specific folder, or kind of everything to clean up the folder and subfolders beneath that. It's really simple to go in and do that. It's just from Outlook, from the home. It goes in and just examines all those conversations, and anything that's redundant, it'll just move it to your deleted files. It'll just dust up, basically. And so it's really simple. Left pane under home, clean up. I usually do it at the folder level. I have a relatively flat folder structure, so I don't have 5 folders deep within that, but you have the ability to go in and clean up across those if you organize your Outlook. No judgment here on folders and subfolders. I think I'm past that. And then everything gets moved over to the deleted items, and so you have that kind of. I'm of my practice is that I'll leave things generally in the deleted items for a long time and let the auto cleanup go in there based on date ranges, so that it gives me some time. If I'm going and searching for something, I don't find it. I'll occasionally find those things. I generally recommend people don't empty that folder instantly. Don't worry about it. Just set up a policy that it deletes the deleted items folder by date. Just giving yourself that little time to kind of rescue a mistake that's made. But anyway, this is just a quick and easy tip that as Tom said, we both regularly use this, and cleans up space. And I don't like the clutter of the duplicates out there. So nice, quick, and easy tip.
Yeah, during our migration, we would send out weekly emails that pretty much had the same subject line. But of course, we'd send that blind copy to like 100 people. So we'd get all these things coming back in, and subject lines, you really couldn't tell what was going on. You had to kind of look at who it's coming from. And I used to just use this maybe like once every 2 or 3 days, where Sandra, my coworker, she's like, oh my gosh, I use that hourly. Why would you need hourly? Well, during the migration, it's like, first thing I do when I get off this call is I will go to my inbox, and regardless of how many items are out there, I will do cleanup, folders and subfolders, hit enter, and then I will start looking at what I need to do. The only thing I need to remember when I do this is I'll look at like the first email at the top of the thread. I'll go, I don't have a clue as to what they're talking about. And it's like, did you mean to send this? Oh, wait a minute. This is probably like 4 or 5 emails all combined into one now. And I have to remember to read down further to make sure that something wasn't mentioned a little further down that was a separate email at one point, but I've combined them all into one during the cleanup. So
I have to constantly, I'll go one step further where I'm sure this happens to you too, where I'll then start taking action on that midway through and find out
yes.
4 or 5 down the chain, somebody says, you know what, never mind, I found it. I'm like, dang it.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly catching myself do that on these DLs, which is a great argument in defense of doing it first.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
Well, Tom, over to you.
Well, let me go ahead and share once you stop.
I've stopped.
And that is a really great tip. In fact, the other day I was thinking, have I shared that one before? I really should go out and check and see. Well, I haven't, but it has been shared, so I'll make sure that one doesn't get out here ever again.
It'll be in the database. I need to refresh the database so we both have the list. Keep ourselves honest.
Yeah, so here's my 6th tip, and I have carried this over for like the last 3 months as my backup tip. It's finally now made it out like yours finally made it out. So this is looking at the version history on Office files. And so what's nice...
Part 2 to your previous one.
Say what?
This is a good part 2 to your previous one.
Actually it is. Good point. I hadn't thought of it that way. I still think I'll lose, but that is really, thank you. I like that.
Way to try to nurture the pity vote there, Tom. Yeah.
No, I'm not trying for the pity vote. What you shared is a great tip. It will change their lives. No question about it. You will win this one. So on this one, if you're trying to go and find out, hey, what's the version history of this? Well, I was always used to seeing it as part of, I'm looking at the view, I go out, I click the ellipsis, I go down to version history, I click there, it pops it up. Well, you can actually find the version history from within the document itself, which is really nice. And all you have to do, like in this particular case, I'm looking obviously at an Excel file, and up in the upper right corner, you'll see a little clock icon, which is standing for versions over time, history. And when you click that, it comes up with your side panel, and this will give you not necessarily the version number of what you're dealing with, but it will tell you when the files were saved and by whom. And what's really nice is it gives you a link to open that version of the file based on what it looked like when they did it. So if I want to go back and say, hey, I think Sandra's version was the last one that looked good, I can click on the open version there and see if that's the one that I need, and then I can plan on whether I need to take action based on making that one the most current version or something like that. And it works the same way with SharePoint, or I'm sorry, on Word. You'll see the same icon up there. You'll see the same version history. And I believe I have one more here. Yes, so when I was looking at stuff here on one of the ones we did in April, tell how long I've had this one out there, it's the same thing. Click on the clock icon for version history, and it's going to give me the side panel. So again,
and if you recall, Tom, you also shared the version history capability in OneNote, which is an awesome addition.
Yeah, and that's all. That's even more comprehensive in terms of what you can do with it. But there, you're actually within the application. You're looking at version history within the entire notebook. Here, you're talking about a specific file. Now, if I wanted to go back and do something with saying, let's go back to one of my previous ones where I had like 10 different things out there. If I wanted to make one the most current version or delete a version that was out there, I would still need to go back to the view, click the ellipsis, look at the versions, because that pop-up that comes up will give me the different options for restoring, deleting, things like that. But here it's really good to say who did what when, and when might something have gone wrong if that's what I'm dealing with. So good tip. Go ahead and take a shot at it. And
I've got the poll launched. I know we're at the top of the hour here, so we'll wrap up here very quickly. And let me, while the poll is running, let me
I'll go ahead and stop
sharing. I like how in the chat, the comment that's still standing there is just the hair.
The hair. I'm sure Sandra and I will talk about that as soon as I hang up here.
I keep looking down at that. I just see the words, the hair.
The hair.
All right, going to end the poll, and 6139, and I've taken it. That means I've got the event.
Hey.
Thank you, everybody, for that. Tom is still ahead in the number of, I think both of those events, and I think you're ahead in both of those two stats. So
but it's only by like one. Yeah.
Well, just very quickly though, so we are taking a break for the month of December. So we've just a lot going on, and I know that Tom needs at least a month and a half to prepare for his vacation. So a lot of thought going into that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've got to January. We'll be back with the January Jumble. So it's not only a return of the webinar in January, it's a return to the alliteration. January Jumble.
Yes.
And then
we found descriptions that start with the same.
Yes. And then we also have, just for your reference, you can go and register for both of these now. They're open, but in February, there's the February Fray. That's also happening. And so with that, Tom, as always, thanks for your time. Always enjoy these.
Very, very well done. Very great tips. And I'm sure there were at least 2 or 3 in there that will make people very happy if they start using them on a regular basis.
And this recording should be up, and if you go to tonight, tomorrow, up on Buckley Planet, as soon as of course the slides will be out in SlideShare, that we'll put the recording out on YouTube, and you'll be able to find all these cataloged out on Buckley Planet. But I'm sure, Tom, you'll send it out to your folks who joined as well. But thanks everybody for participating, and hopefully we'll have a great holiday season, and we'll see you in January if nothing else.
Sounds good. Bye everyone.